All right. I want to make sure everybody can see that. I got a new computer monitor, but I couldn't get it to cooperate with me this morning, so I'm still using my laptop here. I got to figure that out. So, uh, what we're going to address today, it looks like my internet's running a little bit slow, so apologize on that. So, we're going to jump into hunger. Uh, what hunger is about, understanding it a little bit, how to control it. What does it mean? Because I think it's one of those things that sometimes we allow uh, we when somebody gets hungry or we get hungry in general, we think we instantly have to go refuel, and that's not necessarily what we need to do from that response. It's okay to have some type of hunger response. So, understanding hunger, how to minimize excessive hunger responses, because that's going to be important. How carbohydrates can support that, the right carbohydrates. So we'll talk about that. Um, Reframe hunger as normal biological signals rather than something to fear. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit. It's going to be okay to have hunger. It's a natural response, and it's a response is a communication pattern that gives us feedback, and it's okay because the feedback can be good feedback. So it's going to be a normal response that you should have because it's going to indicate some of the metabolic responses are going on from a chemical standpoint. In case the body is accessing stored energy. So as we start getting a hunger response, that's a natural response for us to say, okay, do we need to eat now? We may need to. It also is an indication of your metabolic process working, your metabolism working. Often presents during effective fat loss as well, and then eliminates hunger entirely, often leads to rebound or overeating. So it's okay to tamp down the hunger. Don't feel like you have to not have some type of hunger. And that's where we can get into some of those cycles where we overconsume because it takes a little bit of time for the hunger response to shut off. So if somebody slows down the process of eating, stays hydrated, and then what you consume are all going to be wins for you to help pull down that hunger response. So, and then here's some things. Hunger does not mean muscle loss, starvation, or failure. None of those. Again, it's just a response letting you know energy stores uh, may be getting low or being utilized. It's a natural response for us to survive. So we just have to figure out better ways for you to effectively control hunger to make sure that we stay in some type of caloric deficit utilizing fat as a fuel source. So those are all some of the foundational things we do in the program. So I'm going to go through productive and then problem hunger. So productive hunger, mild and gradual. You'll feel it. I'm actually a little bit hungry right now, and I just had lunch. I for me, I don't like the sensation of being over full, and I've always been that way. So I eat just enough, and then that hunger response may still be there, and it eventually kind of goes away, or I ignore it, and then I can manage it. It's not like uh, I'm unproductive. Now, if it's tapping your energy sources and causing brain fog and things of that nature, yes, we may have to, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Um, you know, Improves meal satisfaction, does not create anxiety. Those are all components that's productive hunger. Now, problem hunger, intense, sudden irritability, shakiness, brain fog, loss of control of eating. So that's where we may be in too high of a deficit, or it's been too long of a period without consuming some type of fuel source. Specifically, if we're in a caloric deficit and we go extended period of time without consuming, our blood sugar is going to respond. So you may have some, and I've done cuts and done all the different things to get really lean. And I would say, one thing that when you're in the middle of a cut, having small kids running around, you are irritable. So just understand that, just being more aware, uh, specifically if you're cutting carbs and things of that nature. And that's my own experience. So you will notice if you're low calorie, and maybe you're manipulating your macros and you're low for that day for a specific reason, you may feel some irritability or energy levels be affected. So what we want to really do with this is minimize problem hunger, not all hunger. So we want to have some hunger, but we want to be able to manage the hunger responses. Some of the reasons why we see hunger may or eliminating hunger backfire, uh, severe calorie restriction. If we push too hard, again, there's a happy place because we don't want to put too much stress, not only on the hormonal response, which I think I talk about, yes, in here, um, but just in general, making sure that we have enough energy to continue to burn calories and stay focused and do what we need to do from a day-to-day, responsibilities. Skipping protein, again, you guys hear us talk about protein a lot because it's going to help tamp down that hunger response. So that's just another tool in the toolbox to help with stabilization of insulin response and then um, being able to extend the amount of time or tamp down the hunger response. Avoiding carbs totally, and then overuse stimulants, excuse me. Coffee is a great tool to tamp down hunger response. I've used it in the past, caffeine in general. But again, you want to have a balance there where you're not over consuming, you're staying hydrated. So if things do backfire, hormonal disruption, it can put more stress on your hormone responses across the board, not just one, multiple. So, from insulin to your thyroid, across the board, and growth hormone, all those can be impacted. Just depends on the restriction and how long and the stressors on the body. So there could be an increase in cravings, reduced in consistency of what your plan is. So so here's just an overview of, and this is general. It goes, a little bit more scientific than this. Is how is hunger? How is it regulated? Is controlled by blood sugar stability and blood sugar response. So again, being able to consume certain macros will help stabilize that. And you can control your hunger response a lot with, the protein and certain types of carbohydrates and certain and fats as well, because I think I talk about that as well. And this is where, not to get off the subject, but like the GLP-1, the the third generation of it, trizepatide, what they've been able to do is really maneuver that peptide to help control hunger responses, but it also stabilizes insulin. And then when you have those two together, that's actually a really good thing as long as the person understands where they're at in the relationship with food. And then the third thing that these new versions of the GLP-1 do is fat oxidation, which that's utilizing fat as a fuel source. That's what we try to do naturally in this program with resistance training, macro specific to you, rest recovery, getting your lean tissue up and your metabolic process up, controlling those macros, getting your body to utilize fat as a fuel source. You can naturally do that, and that's what we coach. But with a GLP-1, it accelerates the process. So that's a win-win. But again, you want to make sure that the relationship with the food consumption, protein, all those things are dialed in because it's just going to accelerate. It's a tool in the toolbox. So your gut hormones, ghrelin, and the GLP-1. So again, the peptide stimulates that. So the other thing that GLP-1 does is slows down your digestive tract, so you're emptying, so you stay fuller longer. So again, there's a combination of things it does. Stress and cortisol can impact your hunger responses. If we have a lot of stress, cortisol's higher, many times we're gonna consume more. We're hungry, or other thing. This next one, sleep and recovery. That's a big one. That's why we coach this as one of the foundational marker points. If we're not getting proper sleep and recovery, our body is going to respond with hunger responses, and then because we're chasing energy, we need fuel, and then we'll go after that, and so we may overconsume. specifically in carbohydrate. So willpower alone does not. We want to use these tools to help willpower in educational processes to make sure that we have a happy place of hunger responses that we can gain momentum and continue the fat loss process. So here's some strategies that you guys can implement. And again, these may be new to some, they may not to others. So again, you're going to hear this repeatedly is the protein. You want a foundational component of protein. Are you taking that in for breakfast? You should be, because that's going to help stabilize insulin response, hunger response. So you want to make sure that we're getting sufficient amount of protein in specific to you. I'll give you some ranges. Obviously, they're all set up in your app based upon your macros. If you are not doing strength training, obviously some of you we roll into that component. Strength training is a good tool to stabilize insulin responses because if we can get your percentage of body fat down and your lean tissue up a little bit, your insulin is better. So that way, when you do consume, it's not going to have peaks and valleys. So it will help control your hunger response. Now, I will say this with strength training, you will have a natural hunger response based upon the volume of work you do. So if you're in a program that's taxing you, you will have a response and a hunger response based upon the muscle damage done, the energy expenditure, things of that nature, the volume and load put on the body. You may have a natural hunger response. I get this from the guys in my coaching program quite often, hungry all the time, and that is due to increasing the volume of load and resistance training. So it's not a bad thing. It's just how we manage it with the macronutrient. So avoid long fasting early in the fat loss. Now this, you know, fasting again is a tool. It's not a fix-all. There's different strategies for this. We just got to watch specifically females in fasting extended periods of time because it will start having stress responses instead of benefits. What I'm saying there is there's stress response or stress on the hormone response. So just be careful on that. You don't want to go, if you're doing it, again, it's not a fix all, it's a tool. We typically do a natural fast from the last time we eat or the last meal to the waking hours. So 6 to 8 hours, sometimes 10 hours, depending on that. That's a natural fast, perfect. Typically, you want to break that with a good protein source. And then improve sleep and stress management. We talk about those in this program as well. Dial into sleep is going to help your hunger responses. It's going to help the fat loss process. Stress management is the other tool. Central nervous system control. Again, learning how to utilize diaphragmatic breathing, box breathing, controlling your central nervous system should be a thing that you want to do on a daily basis. Let me make sure my bill's popping in. Sorry. That way, it allows you to manage stress better. Okay. If you guys want more information, we do have modules and training modules on stress response and central nervous system. Again, you're going to hear me talk about this. Protein is going to be your anchor. You always want to start and build your meals around protein. It's going to reduce ghrelin, preserves muscle, stabilizes blood sugar, takes longer to break down. There's so many benefits, hormonal stability, response. So there's so many good positive components to the consumption of protein. So again, target, I'm just giving you guys, it's going to be more specific to you guys individually, 25 to 40 grams per meal for most adults. I sometimes what I try to do is get up to 60 in my first meal. Again, you have to work at it. You have to understand how you can get those extra grams of protein in, and you can sneak them in different ways. So always anchor it with protein. A thing that we don't talk about enough with hunger responses and then carbohydrates in general are fiber. And on my side, I coach this a lot. If If we're going to go after carbs, let's go after a fibrous carbohydrate with whatever protein source you're consuming. There's going to be a lot of benefit with this. Not only just a health benefit, the digestion benefit. It's going to slow your digestion, working like a GLP-1, right? Improves gut hormone signaling response. So it's going to tamp down that hunger response. Glucose spikes. So it will really help with the protein, not have that spike in insulin. When you typically consume a little bit more of a simple carbohydrate, let's say, bread in comparison to broccoli, you're going to have a response in your insulin that shoots up and it's going to crash back down, opening up the window for a over consuming. So you're going to chase that energy response and the ability for you to utilize fat as a fuel source or conserve fat as a fuel. So insulin does a lot around that fat loss, and that's why we want to try to minimize simple sugars and simple carbohydrates as much as possible. They're not totally bad, but how you consume them in your journey can slow you down some. So, and I always say, hey, if you're going to build the carbohydrate, use vegetables with your protein. Again, specifically if you can get more fibrous veggies, it's great. Then you go into like berries, beans, oats, whole grains. Kind of that breaks it down in a format that's like, hey, ideally let's go vegetables first and then move down the chain. And then this is another thing that we get a lot of questions about, maybe concerns, because when you start manipulating your macro intake, this will change dramatically, specifically as you push your protein up. There's no other way around it. As you push your protein, your fat content's going to go up. Okay. Fat is not necessarily bad. The type of fat can not necessarily be healthy, right? Um, Fat got a bad rap years ago. It's a tool as well. It's a macronutrient that you can utilize to help slow gastric emptying, improves the sensation of hunger response as well and being satisfied. Supports hormone responses as well. It's really good for that. So obviously moderate amounts alongside protein carbs. Anytime you start pushing your protein up, your fat content's going to go up with it. So don't overthink that too much. Um, because if we're hitting your protein goals and your fat content's too high, don't worry about it as long as you're still within your calorie intake, not over your calorie intake. Specifically to it or under it will be good. So carbs are not necessarily the enemy. We need to use them properly, and I think that's really how you want to state it. Because they're going to help reduce your cortisol response, support thyroid and leptin, and improve training output. So when you're working out, specifically resistance training, you use muscle glycogen, you use a lot of carbohydrate with muscle contraction, and we deplete those stores when we do resistance training. So if you're lower carb and you're doing resistance training, which I've done, and if you've ever been really low carbs, like under 50, 25 grams in a cut, the workout suffers. Okay. Not saying you should do that, but I'm just giving you examples. As soon as you start pulling your carbohydrate stores, your body will still utilize those stores in whatever format you have them in, liver glycogen. So it'll start pulling it from different areas because you need carbohydrate for contraction and function for the body. So as you start pulling your total grams per day, your body will start utilizing some of the internal stores of glycogen. It'll convert it as well. But we need to use it more and think along the lines of, hey, let's use carbohydrates as a supporting tool for us when we need some energy, making sure we're getting good workouts in, and then supporting thyroid, leptin, cortisol, and making sure our training output's good. So, and it can also be utilized to tamp down long-term hunger. I was talking to one of my clients the other day, and we're pulling carbohydrates. We're working on his percentage of body fat. We're getting it lower, and on days he doesn't lift, we may pull his carbs a little bit harder. And the first 2 to 3 days you do this, you will notice In the afternoon, you'll have a little bit of lag, a little bit of energy, and you'll notice that your carbohydrates are lower. What I recommended to him is if he has some natural fruit, you cut up fruit, grab a couple pieces, consume it. It's going to help punch up his insulin or insulin response, carbohydrate, and stabilize. Making sure he's consuming a lot of water as well. Okay, so those are just two ways to control that response and not go overboard because that's what happens to a lot of us. We let it go too far. So best carbs, fiber rich, slow digestion carbs. Potatoes and sweet potatoes are not necessarily the devil, but obviously, if we start putting a bunch of things on them to make them more calorie dense, that's when we get in trouble. So we have potatoes, oats, rice. You always want to build all these with protein because the protein will offset some of the carbohydrate insulin response. Beans, lentils, again, those are going to be higher in fiber, take longer to break down. And again, fruits with fiber, full fruits. So the whole fruit, not in a blender. So that's another thing is we start blending things up, or juicing or things like that. We pull the fiber out of it. So we just got to be careful, making sure that if we do some of those things, the fiber content's still there. So here's some of them to be more aware of. Harder to regulate appetite with these ones. So liquid sugars. So any of those drinks that have sugar content in them, and you know that they've done a lot of research and have if you want to go down the rabbit hole, even some of the sweeteners still have an impact on your insulin response uh, around spiking it, dropping, spiking it, and dropping. So even though it's not a sugar or it's a better sugar, you still may have that response. So you just got to watch, what you're putting in your drinks. Okay, refined snacks you want to minimize or stay away from very minimal desserts eaten alone, or just have a small portion and move on, where it's not just going to go totally wreck your progression. Because once you start consuming some of these simple sugars, it's you get that stimulation and your body craves more of it. So you just want to manage that as much as you can. It's going to spike your blood sugar and increase the inbound hunger response. So it's a vicious cycle. You just keep cycling it, and that's when we start over consuming instead of regulating. The hunger response, we overconsume. So this is another good tool to use when you're consuming carbohydrates. Best times around workouts because again, what I said earlier is your body utilizes a ton of carbohydrates for muscle contraction, which is a great thing. So you may need to replenish and or fuel a little bit of carbohydrates prior to your workout, depending on the person, and intensity of the workout. But that's just a good rule of thumb. Now, I will say this: if you're doing a lot of cardio activity, and this is why we will talk to you about this, and depending on what type of cardio activity, that will kick up your hunger response as well. And your cravings as well. So that's why a lot of times when we're in some of these fat loss phases, we try to minimize some of the intensity of the cardio because it becomes more challenging for you to manage your hunger response, and then carbohydrate as well. So then people start consuming too many carbohydrates, and their calorie consumption pushes too high, and their metabolic process can't handle that. So you can do it at the largest meal of the day too, if you do that, or you can just break them up throughout the day in small portions. Evening meals, I don't want to get into this too much, but there's some research that talks about taking in a couple grams of carbohydrate in that last meal and or pre-bedtime to help with deep sleep. There's been some research around that. If somebody's really low carb, it may disrupt their sleep. So you just got to pay attention to if you're tracking that and you have everything tracked, well, that's going to give you data points. Hey, if you're low carb and your sleep was way off and you see this as a trend, then you may manipulate that a little bit, but just don't feel like you have to overconsume in calories just to get the carbs up. There's a sweet spot as well. You want to make sure you get the sleep, but just don't overconsume to get there. And then here's, a meal that's going to help push down that hunger response and extend it out. So lean protein, fiber rich, specifically veggies. I always say, hey, if you can get a fibrous veggie, specifically green leafy, like a broccoli, something like that, because the not only is it high in fiber, but the or nutrient dense. Look at it from that standpoint. And then moderate fat. You can always bring your fat in. You can bring a little bit of avocado and or some other oils. You just got to watch, some of the avocados. The consumption is just going to push your calories up. So just be careful when you start introducing fat because it can push your calories up as well pretty fast. But this type of combination is going to help stabilize the hunger response in a multitude of ways from a physiology standpoint. So this is why we coach some of these concepts. And it's putting all the pieces together. Now here's because we have several clients utilizing GLP-1 as a tool, which it can be an awesome tool, and it's there, and we need to use it for its power. So appetite suppression does not remove nutritional needs, right? This is where documentation and hitting certain marker points, specifically if you're on a GLP-1, because if it tamps down that hunger response so much and you're not hungry at all and you're not getting your nutrients in, so we got to make sure we're managing our fat loss and lean tissue, right? So that way we're not pushing in and doing metabolic harm by losing lean tissue. Lean tissue is a lot harder to put on than than fat mass day in and day out. So you don't want to smoke your lean tissue because it messes with your metabolic process and your insulin response as well. So you want to prioritize protein, resistance training, fiber, strategic carbohydrates. Same concepts, really. We're not going to teach you anything differently. It's just really you got to be a little bit more aware of your caloric intake because and monitor your percentage of body fat. Those two things are going to be very important, specifically on the GLP-1. So you want to look at hunger as feedback. It provides you information. And I think a lot of times it's a good response. It means your metabolic process is working. You're burning fuel. And that's not a bad thing. It's just, hey, how can we manage it where we stabilize the insulin, get ourselves to utilize fat as a fuel source, use proper nutrition, protein, carbohydrate, fat in a format that's going to benefit you in the process. So it's a guide. We want to adjust it, use it as a tool, manage hunger, do not eliminate it. So I know we've had some conversations about hunger, and that's why we wanted to put a little bit more education behind hunger responses and what it is from a physiology standpoint, how to manage it and monitor it. So if you're hungry, you're okay. That's a good thing. It's just taking it to the extreme. It's where you can manage the hunger and continually manage the hunger without over consuming and still be productive and have enough energy to do the things you need to do. And that's where you can manipulate the carbs, proteins, fats within. Obviously, there's external factors as well. But this is one of the reasons why I wanted to put this one together. I know I touched on hunger in a little bit different format a couple months ago, but I wanted to come back to this in a little bit different lens because we get the question quite often, about hunger and hunger responses. And again, it's a tool, it's a indication, and it's a way for us to get feedback. And then, okay, how do we respond to that feedback by fueling the body? So I am going to go ahead and open this thing back up and stop the share and see if you guys have any specific questions about hunger in general. And if I can answer any other specific, I'll just open it up. If you do, you guys can jump on or you can type in the chat. I'll answer any question I can. So I'll just open it up for you guys if you guys have anything. I'll give you a few minutes.
Tony, I have a question.
Sure.
Um, so you did talk about the workouts can make you more hungry, which is what's been happening to me. So, but you still want the edge of hunger. So, that's where I'm like, all right, what do I.
Yeah, so the two things like the when to use a carbohydrate, um, as long as our protein is close enough to the goals that we set, you can bring in a little bit more carbohydrates on days you do workout because your body utilizes quite a bit of carbohydrate as in muscle contraction, and it depletes some of those stores. And the reason you're going to have a hunger response is because what you're doing is there's a breakdown of there's micro tears in muscle fiber. They got to rebuild, replenish, and they need nutrients to do that. So there's a response to say, hey, we need to eat because you just did all this metabolic load on the body. So it's going to respond that way. So it's finding a balance there where you don't overconsume, but you tamp it down. I mean, obviously, if you can manage some protein carbohydrates together, it's always a good combination on workout days. Does that help a little bit? Or is there
Yeah.
any or is there any specific thing that you've tried or are you're doing to help with that?
Well, I no, it's just happened the last few times. Like today, I wasn't as hungry as I have been the last couple times. So I made like an egg salad with just two hard boiled eggs and cottage cheese. And that's how I make it. So I ate that and I was like, all right, and I'm not hungry, so I don't want to do lunch. But I'm wondering, I guess you wouldn't know, but I'm thinking if I kept having that response, is it better for me to try to eat something before I work out? Because I usually just do the protein shake with the coffee every day.
Hmm. How do you feel in your workout? That would be the indicator.
I'm fine during the workout.
Yeah. Then
Yeah.
then then I wouldn't add anything. The only reason, and I kind of explained that in the presentation, if you're low carb and pretty low carb, it will start impacting your ability to your recovery will get longer. You just can't come back and do the movements because your muscle glycogen it's depleted. When it starts depleting, your body has to start pulling other sources of glycogen, and that just it'll slow you down. Your heart rate will go up more, so your resting heart rate will be affected a little bit. So if it's not impacting your workout, I wouldn't touch it yet.
Okay.
But you're doing the right thing post. See, do you work out in the morning? That's another
Yeah.
question. So that's another question when you guys work out, right? I've worked out evening, morning, middle of the day because I just had to. It was just a time thing. If you're working out in the morning, that first meal after, yeah, load up on the protein, get as much protein as you can with a good carbohydrate, and that should really stabilize your insulin and really set you up for success post workout.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so that's, I mean, you're doing, perfect. I actually do fasting workouts. It took me a while to get there because I have, I'm slightly glycemic. And I had to practice this for years and manipulate fasting to allow my insulin to do fasting workouts. So I don't consume, I mean, I consume coffee and, some creamer prior to the workout. And then during the workout, I actually have so it does have some carbohydrates in it. It's some amino acids. So I shouldn't say fasting. So that's probably untrue, but I haven't eaten. I usually eat my first full meal post my workout. But it just really depends. There's that when people start going down that rabbit hole of like, oh, I got to do a post workout or oh, I got to do a pre workout or I got to eat XYZ. As long as we're getting a good workout, our nutrients, macronutrients are within the ranges we need to be in. We're in a deficit. We're going to move the needle. When people say all that the stuff about timing and workout timing, we're not getting on stage for a show, and that's where or competing at a high level. So some of those things are not going to impact us. So you're doing all the right things. Just the hunger response is a good thing because the resistance training is working. And then that's when I would tell individuals, if you have the ability to monitor your percentage of body fat, lean tissue, that's going to be another tool. That way, when we see the needle move, what does it look like? Making sure percentage is going down.
Well, and I just felt like I've been able to increase my weights on a lot of things these last couple weeks. So I just, put it in with that as well. That was the reason I was so hungry.
Yep, you're putting a metabolic stress on the body, which is a natural component, which you want it. You want it to do that because then you're doing the right thing. You're pushing yourself. So that's all good. Now it's just consistency. Wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, it works. You're right.
Yeah. Hey, it could be really simple, but we have to complicate everything. That's called life.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, no, you're doing awesome. And the software that we have, it's getting ready to roll out. When you guys do work out and you guys go up in weight, there's going to be a tool in there that allows us to see what's going on. So it will help us just manage your guys's and your workouts. So there's a couple other things that we have on our software side that's going to be cool for us as coaches. All right. Is there any other questions? I know, like always, nutrition can be exciting, not so much, but it's there's a lot of misconception and confusion, and we just need to simplify the process as much as we can with nutrition. And consistency is always going to be key. So, well, awesome. If you guys don't, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. But what I will probably do again, because I did this a couple months ago, is I will put up a survey together here at the end of the year and kind of put it out to you guys to see what other specific topics or interest that you guys may want to address. Because there's so many different avenues you can go in nutrition, and obviously I've repeated some of these components in a different lens because sometimes it helps, coming from a different angle. Uh, but what I'll do at the end of the year here is put together another form that I'll kick out in the Trainerize app that have you guys fill out that will allow me to kind of lay out these next 6 months of topics that may be more beneficial to you guys, because it's there's just so many things that we can talk about. I just want to make sure it's relevant to you guys. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up, and then if you guys have any other questions, use us in the app. I'm in the app as well. Uh, you'll see me pop in and help support Aaron. So um, just use this if you have other questions. With that said, you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk with you guys soon.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.